dude with a badge and a gun to be there. There's just not. It's just two adults who can't figure something out, right? Two adults who can't get along, or two adults who refuse to be adults, right? And so essentially what Jethro here is saying is like, listen, Moses, we've got to teach these people to, on an individual level, follow and trust the laws of God, right? And so Moses does that, right? He instills this judge system over tens, 50s, hundreds, thousands. But then God takes it a step further, right? And so there's this idea that the people of Israel need to understand the laws and the wills of God. But how do they do that? Right? How do they do that? Because for the most part, Moses was right. Because up until then, or at least up until chapter 18 and 19, Moses was right? He was the one through which God spoke. He was the one through which God gave his laws and his decrees and made his covenants and led the people and did all those sorts of things, right? Like Moses was the guy. But now we're about to take a really monumental, thank you. Monumental shift in the way that people connect with the will of God, right? So let's do that. Let's go ahead and read chapter 19. And we'll go to verse 4. Now we'll start in verse 3. Chapter 19, verse 3. So Moses went up to the mountain to God, and the Lord called him from the mountain. This is what you must say to the house of Jacob and explain to the Israelites. So this is what God is telling Moses to tell the people. Verse 4. You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you will carefully listen to me and keep my covenant, you will be my own possession out of all the peoples. Although the world is mine, and you will be my kingdom of priests, my holy nation. These are the words that you are to say to the Israelites. So God tells Moses to tell the people, all right, you guys have seen what I can do, right? You guys have seen the salvation that I have brought upon you, right? And now, because I need you to trust in the decrees and the laws and the covenant I am going to make with you, right? Later on, Israel will answer in verse 8. Then all the people responded together, we will do all the Lord has spoken. Man, if it was only that simple. That's true, right? But at least at the very start, the Israelites listened to this word that Moses gave down to God, this word that God gave down to Moses, and they said, yes, we will do that, right? We will do things. So God does, right? God gives them. And I think to a great extent, right, because we are so separated from the giving of these 10, I think they kind of lose some of their impact, right? Now, it's ironic that I say that because, man, if we look basically at the morality of Western society till about the last 50 years or so, could say with great confidence it was pretty well steeped in commandments, right? Maybe some of you would disagree, but at least from what I see, even in the laws in the state of Washington, right? Like, wow, like the 10 Commandments are everywhere, right? But I want us to understand how monumental shift this proclamation was, right? Because in this society, essentially what God is saying, we'll go through them. We can't dissect every few classes, but we'll go through kind of rapid fire all of the 10. Essentially, what God is calling is this idea of selflessness, right? This under of selflessness and taking care of taking care. Thomas likes to call them those on the march, right? Finding justice for those on the march, right? That is a radical shift from those Eastern cultures that were going on at the time, right? That was such a radical shift. The cultures that were happening at the time, right? And why would God do that, right? Why would God do that? Why would God call his people, his priesthood, why would he call his people to this radical selflessness? What do you guys think? Sure. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Right. There's. I asked why, and that was a broad question, right? But like, I think first off, right, because it's better, better by God, better not too wrong. In fact, as we as we go on, and we're going to stop at verse 20, but as God continues Moses, right, God gives this and what slaves and what that as God continues, right, as we look back on eyes, a lot of those, like what Dirk was saying, building blocks, or what is a way to build society that, right? Yes, sir. Yes, and that was going to be my second thought. Absolutely, right? And like, so not only are these way of doing things better, but yes, it's going to be a very distinct dichotomy between this group of God's people and everything around it, right? If this group of people is called out to be a holy priesthood, right? God's representation on earth to all humanity, they got to be different, right? They got to be different. If these people claim to be the followers of the one and only God, but are just like everybody else around them, who cares, right? Who cares? Every God claims to be the prominent and most and bestest God, right? So what does it matter that you group of dirty slaves, like what does it matter that you guys claim to be the one and true and only, have the one and true and only God, right? What does that matter to me, right? But then if I see you acting differently, being different, that's going to make an impact. That's going to mean something, right? So let's take a look at them real quick with our last few minutes. Yeah, please. No, go ahead. Sure, yeah. It's got to be older than Moses, yeah. Yeah. That's funny, yeah. Sure, yeah. Also, Dirk, it's interesting that you mentioned, right, and Royce as well. Like this is the first kind of this is God's kind of first shot as taking these, holding them, right? We'll see later on, particularly where take a lot of these things, right, that we're about to read, and he never disparages them, right? But he's like, you've heard it said to do this, right? Then just hones it in, right? Doesn't do away with it, but he hones it in, right? Heard it say, don't kill, don't murder, right? But I say, don't even bear anger with you, right? Don't commit adultery, right? But I say, look on someone, right? So he takes these first shot over the bow, right? Hones them in. So let's read them, right? Let's read them. Chapter 20, starting in verse 2. I'm just going to go through all of them. I am the Lord your God, brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the place of slavery. Do not have other gods besides me. Do not make an idol for yourself, whether in the shape of anything in the heavens above, or on the earth below, or in the waters under the earth. Do not bow and worship to them. Do not serve them. I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, bringing the consequences of the father's iniquity on the children. Do not misuse the name of the Lord your God, because the Lord will not leave anyone unpunished. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. You are to labor 6 days and do all your work. The seventh day is a Sabbath day to the Lord your God. You must not do any work, not your son or daughter or male or female servant, your livestock or the resident alien who is within the gates. For the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and everything in them 6 days. And he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and declared it holy. Honor your father and mother, so that you may live a long life in the land the Lord your God is giving to you. Do not murder. Do not commit adultery. Steal. Do not give false testimony against your neighbor. Do not covet your neighbor's house. Do not covet your neighbor's wife, his male donkey, or his ox or his donkey, or anything that belongs. There's an interesting thing, right? We can kind of see this. It's not a split. There's definitely two sections, right? We're dealing with two different aspects of commit, right? And the two different aspects is, all right, how do we connect with God, And then how do we connect with everybody else, right? How do we connect with all of the others around, right? So God makes it very clear, first few commandments, right? Like, listen, I'm the guy, right? Not only am I the guy, I'm the thing. I'm everything, right? Yes, sir. Oh, not you? Yeah. Praise him. Yeah, that's right. I'm the guy, right? I'm the thing. I am the one, right? You have to make this commitment to me, right? It's interesting that the second commandment, right? Don't make any other idols. A while ago, I was doing a study with the youth group, and even now more so, like I see it more than ever. The book was called Not a Fan. It was a really interesting. Basically, the idea was you have to be a committed follower. Fan of the Seahawks. I'm right, and so that was the idea. And one of the big things that you have to fully commit to serving God. Right? If we let any take that spot, right now, granted, nowadays society is far less like part of an idol, bow down, but there are definitely other things that draw my finance, a lot of other things in life draw away from serving, right? So just because it's not wood or ivory doesn't mean that it's not an idol that I'm not bowing down, right? So I am God. I am God. I am above all things. I am the thing that you ought to and should commit, right? And I find it interesting because then he jumps into, okay, so not only am I God, not only am I the guy, right? Ought to, foreign. Not gonna get there. I'm sorry, guys. You ought to, you ought to take time in your life that you commit fully and completely to me. You ought to take time in your life that you commit fully and completely. I'm not gonna die on the hill of what day of the week Sabbath is. I'm not gonna die on that hill. I'm not gonna touch it. I'm not gonna fight you on it, right? But I do think it's obvious that God wants us to be very intentional about committing an aspect of our time fully and completely to Him. And I'll admit, I don't think Sunday morning all on its own suffices. I'll leave that there, okay? But then God makes this interesting. He makes this interesting transition, right? Because in those last couple of commandments, He says, if you don't do these things, it's going to have lasting consequences, right? If you're not committed to this, right, then wrath is going to show generations on down your family line. However, commitment is also going to show generations on down your family line, right? And so, because of that, God then says, hey, honor your father and mother. That's a very interesting transition in my opinion, right? So God transitions from, okay, these are the commands between me and you, and then the transition from the commands to you and everybody else is this honor your father and mother, right? Interesting. And again, right, I can't even speak to the number of different complexities that are involved with something like that, right? I'm not going to pretend that that's something that's easy. I'm not going to pretend that it absolutely applies, in black and white lettering to every situation. Don't hear me say that, right? But I think it's obvious that if your father and mother are being honorable, then they ought to be honored. I think that's a pretty clear commitment here, right? And then God makes what, in my opinion, right, are some very very straightforward commandments, right? Don't murder, don't steal, don't commit adultery, right? And I think that one's very interesting, right? Because essentially what God is saying there is, listen, honor that marital relationship. That's important. That means something, right? Don't step outside of that. Again, right? Any and all of these we could go on for weeks and weeks at a time, right? Don't give false testimony against your neighbor, right? Don't lie. Don't lie, right? Your words should be true. I like eventually how James says it, right? In his book, let your yes be yes, let your no be no, right? You don't need a bunch of other stuff that can qualify what you're saying. And then finally, be content with what you have, right? I think that's what that last one is getting at, right? Be content with what you have. Don't covet all of your neighbor's things. How easy is it for us to look at that next cool thing, right? Whatever it is. It's super easy for us to do that, right? So again, I know I only just barely touched on the Ten Commandments, but I hope that we take some time to really delve into those on our own, that we really see this gigantic shift that God made here, right? Now this is not just a group of people who were yanked out of slavery, right, and used to do this job, right? Now God is making this covenant with the people of Israel, right? This is what it looks like for you, right? For you to be a follower of God. Not necessarily the nation, but this is what it looks like for you to be a follower of God, to be a member of my priesthood, to be a member of my holy nation that's going to show myself to this fallen world, right? This is what it looks like. And then with that, he set up this hierarchy of judges and all that other things to help Israel kind of figure stuff out from there. So I'm going to pray us out, and we're good to go. Dear God, thank you so much for thank you for your word. What a cool thing that we have been given for us to be able to get a glimpse into who you are and what you want for us. Thank you for all the work that was done to give us the opportunity for salvation. I pray that we take that seriously, and I pray that we realize the weight that has on our lives. I pray that we do what we can to be followers of yours and to be better for you. And it's in your Son's name I pray. Amen.